When the studio boss yelled at the young woman, John Wayne stood up from his chair and walked slowly toward him. The room instantly fell into complete silence. The film set in Monument Valley, 1971. Red dust hanging in the afternoon air. Cameras positioned on wooden platforms. Crew members adjusting lights and checking sound equipment. Another Western in production, another day of heat and hard work and the careful choreography of making cinema. John Wayne sat in his canvas director's chair, reviewing the day's shooting schedule. At 64 years old, he carried himself with the same deliberate weight he always had, no wasted movements, no unnecessary words. His leather vest hung open over a worn denim shirt. His weathered cowboy hat sat low on his head, shading eyes that had seen too much and said too little. The scene they were filming was simple. A saloon confrontation. Standard Western fare. They'd been at it for 3 hours, working through technical problems with the lighting setup. Near the craft services table, a young woman named Sarah Hernandez was organizing the continuity photographs. 23 years old. Film school graduate. First real job in the industry. She'd been meticulous all week, marking positions, noting costume details, making sure every shot would match when they got to the editing room. The studio executive arrived just after 3 o'clock. His name was Martin Kellerman, senior vice president at the production company. Expensive suit despite the desert heat. The kind of man who believed his title gave him authority over everything and everyone on set. He'd flown in from Los Angeles to check on the production's progress, concerned about budget overruns and schedule delays. He walked through the set like he owned it. Because in his mind, he did. Wayne noticed him immediately but said nothing. Just watched with those steady eyes that missed nothing. Kellerman stopped at the craft services area. Looked at the photographs Sarah had organized. Picked one up without asking permission. Studied it. His face darkened. Who did this? His voice cut across the set. Not asking. Accusing. Sarah looked up from her work. Sir? This. He held up the photograph. This continuity shot. The gun belt is on the wrong side. Do you have any idea how much this kind of mistake costs us? Sarah stepped closer, looking at the image. That's not a mistake, Mr. Kellerman. If you look at the shooting script, the character switches his gun belt in scene 42 after the... Don't tell me about the script. Kellerman's voice rose. I've been making films since before you were born. This is incompetence. Pure incompetence. The set had gone quiet now. Crew members stopping their work. Heads turning. Wayne set down his shooting schedule. Slowly. Mr. Kellerman, I have the notation right here. Sarah kept her voice steady, professional. She reached for her continuity binder. Scene 42 specifically calls for. I don't care what your little notebook says. Kellerman stepped closer to her, his finger jabbing the air near her face. Sarah's hands trembled slightly as she held the binder. Sir, there's no mistake. The script specifically. You're arguing with me? Kellerman's face flushed red. You're actually standing here arguing with me about a mistake you made? It's not a mistake. Her voice was quieter now. Uncertain. The confidence draining as the man with power and fury bore down on her. Then you're calling me a liar? Wayne stood up. He didn't announce it. Didn't make a sound. He simply rose from his chair. That massive frame unfolding with deliberate slowness, and took one step forward. Wayne didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. The entire set felt the shift. That particular kind of silence that happens when something is about to change fundamentally and irreversibly. Kellerman was still focused on Sarah, his fingers still pointing, his voice still rising. I want you off this set. I want you off this production. I want... He stopped. Because John Wayne was walking toward him. Not quickly. Not with obvious aggression. Just walking. That same purposeful, unhurried gait that had carried him across 1,000 movie screens. Boots on the dusty ground. Each step deliberate. Kellerman turned. His aggressive posture faltered slightly as he registered Wayne approaching. "John, I'm handling a personnel issue here. Give me a minute." Wayne kept walking. He crossed the 20 feet between his chair and the craft services area in absolute silence. The crew had stopped pretending to work. Everyone was watching now. The cameraman, the lighting crew, the assistant director with his clipboard frozen halfway to his chest. Wayne reached the craft services table. He positioned himself directly between Kellerman and Sarah Hernandez. Not touching anyone. Not threatening. Just standing there, that broad back and weathered frame creating an unmistakable barrier. His right hand hung loose at his side. His face, visible in profile to those watching from the side, showed no anger. Just that absolute, unyielding calm that was somehow more intimidating than any rage could be. "Martin!" Wayne's voice was quiet. Almost conversational. "Step back." Kellerman's face cycled through several emotions in quick succession. Confusion. Irritation. Then the slow dawning realization that he'd miscalculated badly. "John, this doesn't concern you. This is a production management." I said step back. Still quiet. Still calm. But with a quality of finality that made it clear there would be no negotiation. Kellerman took half a step backward. His pointing finger lowered. His expensive suit suddenly seemed less like armor and more like costume. "She made a continuity error that could cost us." "She didn't make an error." Wayne's eyes never left Kellerman's face. "I was there when we shot scene 42. I made the decision to switch the gun belt. It's in the script. It's in the shot. And if you'd taken 2 seconds to look at her documentation instead of yelling at her, you'd know that. The silence on the set was absolute now. Even the wind seemed to have stopped. I'm the executive producer on this film, John. I have a responsibility to." "You have a responsibility," Wayne interrupted, his voice still maddeningly quiet, "to treat people with respect. Especially people who are doing their job correctly while you're throwing accusations around." Kellerman's jaw worked. He looked at Sarah, standing behind Wayne's protective stance, her arms wrapped around herself defensively. He looked at the crew members watching from their positions around the set. He looked back at Wayne, standing there like a wall that had no intention of moving. "This is inappropriate," Kellerman managed. "You can't just—" "Martin!" Wayne took one step closer. Just one. Close enough now that he was well inside Kellerman's personal space. Close enough that Kellerman had to tilt his head slightly up to maintain eye contact. "You're going to apologize to Miss Hernandez. You're going to walk back to your car. You're going to drive back to Los Angeles. And you're going to think real hard about whether yelling at young people trying to do their jobs makes you feel like a big man. Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most important part of this story is still unfolding." To understand what happened next, you need to understand something about John Wayne that the cameras rarely captured. He hadn't served in World War II. While other actors his age, Jimmy Stewart, Clark Gable, Henry Fonda, had enlisted and seen combat, Wayne had gotten deferments, family obligations, his rising career. Reasons that were technically valid but that had haunted him for decades. He'd spent the rest of his life carrying that weight quietly. Never talking about it publicly. Never making excuses. Just carrying it. And part of how he carried it was by being absolutely unwilling to watch powerful people abuse those who couldn't fight back. On every film set, in every production, Wayne had a reputation. He was professional. Demanding. Fair. And if you crossed a certain line, if you bullied someone, if you abused your authority, if you mistook power for righteousness, you would meet the version of John Wayne that didn't need to shout because his presence was louder than any voice could be. The crew knew this. The directors who worked with him knew this. But Martin Kellerman, flying in from his Los Angeles office, had somehow missed the memo. Now he stood in Monument Valley dust, trapped between John Wayne's unyielding stare and the complete silence of a film crew that had stopped breathing, waiting to see what would happen when a studio executive met the line he couldn't cross. "You're out of line, John." Kellerman's voice had lost most of its volume. "I have every right to address performance issues on productions I'm financing." "You have every right to do your job," Wayne agreed, his tone unchanged. "You don't have the right to make a young woman feel small because you're having a bad day and need someone to yell at." "I wasn't." Kellerman stopped. Regrouped. "This is absurd. I'm not going to stand here and be lectured about management by." "Then don't stand here." Wayne's interruption was so quiet it was almost gentle. "Go back to Los Angeles. We'll finish the film. We'll bring it in on budget. We'll deliver something good. And you can tell everyone in your office that you managed the production. But you're done yelling at my crew." The use of the word, "my," was deliberate. Wayne didn't direct this film. He was an actor, same as everyone else on the call sheet. But in that moment, with his hand hanging loose at his side and his weathered face showing absolutely zero doubt, he claimed ownership of every person on that set. Kellerman looked around. At the crew watching. At the cameras positioned and ready. At Sarah Hernandez still holding her continuity binder, still protected by Wayne's massive frame. Away from the cameras, Wayne made a choice no one expected. He reached out, slowly, deliberately, and took Kellerman's forearm. Not aggressively. Not as a threat. Just a firm, unmistakable grip that communicated everything without words. "Martin," Wayne said, his voice dropping even lower so that only Kellerman and those standing very close could hear. "I know you're under pressure. I know the studio is breathing down your neck about costs. I know this is a hard business. But that young woman didn't do anything wrong except her job. And you came onto my set and tried to break her because you needed to feel powerful. That's not acceptable. Not here. Not anywhere." Kellerman's face went through another series of changes. Anger trying to reassert itself. Pride fighting against the reality of the situation. And finally, slowly, something that might have been shame. He stopped. Started again. "The numbers from last week showed we were over budget on." "I don't care." Wayne's grip on Kellerman's arm tightened slightly. "I don't care about your numbers right now. I care that you made someone feel like they weren't good enough when they were doing everything right. So you're going to fix that. Right now." Wayne released Kellerman's arm and stepped aside. The studio executive stood there, suddenly exposed. Without Wayne's frame blocking him, he was face to face with Sarah Hernandez. She looked terrified. Young. Holding her continuity binder like a shield. Kellerman opened his mouth. Closed it. The set waited. "Miss Hernandez," he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. I apologize. I should have reviewed the documentation before making accusations. You were correct about the continuity." Sarah nodded slowly, not quite able to speak. "And you're doing good work," Kellerman added, the words clearly difficult. The photography is very thorough. Very professional." Wayne stood off to the side now, arms crossed, watching. Making sure the apology was complete. Kellerman looked back at him once, seeking, what? Permission to leave? Some sign that this humiliation could end? Wayne just stood there. Waiting. "I should get back to Los Angeles," Kellerman said to no one in particular. "Let you all get back to work. I'll review the dailies from here." He turned and walked toward the parking area where his car waited. Every person on the set watched him go. His expensive suit dusty now, his authority deflated, his footsteps the only sound in Monument Valley. When his car disappeared down the dirt road, the set exhaled. Wayne walked back to Sarah Hernandez. He looked at her continuity binder, then at her face, still pale, still shaken. "You did good work," he said simply. "Don't let anyone tell you different." Her eyes filled with tears. "Thank you, Mr. Wayne. I thought I was going to lose my job." Not on my watch. He tipped his hat slightly and walked back to his chair. The crew returned to work. The cameras rolled. The film got made. But what followed would stay with everyone who witnessed it, forever. Sarah Hernandez went on to become one of Hollywood's most respected script supervisors, working on over 60 films. She never forgot that afternoon in Monument Valley. Neither did anyone else who was there. Share and subscribe. Some stories deserve to be remembered. Years later, at a film industry event, someone asked Sarah what she'd learned from John Wayne. She thought for a long moment. That real power doesn't need to shout, she said. And that protecting people who can't protect themselves is the only kind of strength that matters. Wayne never spoke about that day. He didn't need to. He'd said everything that mattered without raising his voice once.